Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, yo, Marco just disrespected us, bro. He just like in the middle of our conversation, he launched the
I told him to. You didn't hear me say that. I told him to start it.
Oh, okay. Then that's fine. Also, I saw a titty, bro. You was changing your shirt and StreamYard showed a titty. So you guys missed it. If you guys showed up late to this Zoom,
if you guys subscribe to the Profit and Paradox YouTube channel, you'll get exclusive content like me showing my tits for the audience. Just FYI.
That's a double you subscribe because it's actually free, right? So that's better than OnlyFans. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
So guys, just so you know, I'm going to do this announcement at the beginning and at the end. We have a new YouTube channel that is specifically dedicated to Profit and Paradox. Actually, we haven't talked about this, so I don't know how you feel about this, but I think we should post mostly the clips there now, right? Like we can still stream to our YouTube channels, but at least we should also post like certain exclusive things there to give people a reason to subscribe to it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get the link for that.
So that's pretty fire. If you guys have not subscribed to the new podcast channel, please do that because it's dope.
I'll give you guys the link because people are gonna have trouble finding it.
And Jonah may show his titties, which is also cool. We were what you guys missed is right before we launched the podcast, we were discussing what would happen if Jonah passed away immediately on the podcast, what we would do. I was asking him if I could do his eulogy, and he said I had to do it in Jewish.
Anti-Semitic shit I've ever heard in my entire life. No, I'm just
kidding. if I have to do it,
you actually know that at least the beginning of the Hebrew prayers. That's pretty good.
So I legit asked you guys how my audio sounded. Everybody said it was good, and then Jamarco thinks it's a value.
I'm not gonna lie, it sounds way worse now. Like when initially it sounded okay, now you sound way worse than before. Now you sound like you're coming through like
nothing is.
You do sound like you're coming through like a 1995 boom speaker right now, or like a what's it called? Thing you put on.
This better? Is this better?
Yes, quieter but better.
Quieter but better.
Okay, there you go. I like that. That's way better.
Am I good? Am I cooking with Crisco?
Way better.
Okay, I think we're getting somewhere. Am I still?
Now you're quiet. You keep going like I think you keep going like quiet and loud.
Okay.
Enough.
How about this? Am I good right now?
You're good enough. I'll get you screaming. Don't worry.
We're not here for good enough. This is what about now? You got to get me right.
Now you sound kind of shitty again.
Mother, father. All right, hold on. Let me go back to this. Hold on. Like, what about this? How we doing here?
It's kind of like there's some weird reverb happening with you. I don't know what it is.
No, I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
It's good enough. I don't think it's that bad. Guys in the chat, like, if you think it's that bad.
You think people are going to subscribe to the channel for good enough though? I feel like they want spectacular.
For my titties, that is spectacular.
That's not an inaccurate statement. I'm not gonna lie.
Objectively. All right. We are talking about all sorts of cool things for 2025. We're talking about prophecies. We're talking about psychics. And this is going to be interesting, right? Like I have my opinions about psychics and prophecies. I think most of them usually are like kind of like magicians, where it's like sleight of hand with our psychology is what it seems like to me most of the time. Generally.
Wait.
Now,
so hold on, let me make sure I understand. You're saying it's sleight of hand, but with psychology?
Psychics.
Okay.
A lot of times are. Prophecy is a little bit different, right? Because that's like you're predicting something. But a psychic being like, you have someone in your family who died recently. And then I'm like, not really, but I'm grandma, like that's what I feel like psychology, like that's shitty psychism, right? But I feel like doing that at an actual level where it's believable is what psychic stuff is, right?
Okay.
That's my personal, that's what it feels like to me.
So you don't think there's any legitimate psychics, period?
Not really. I don't think so. Now, the prophecy thing, Prophecies, I don't know. The hard part with a lot of, like, especially biblical prophecies is they are things, a lot of them are things that could be made to fit, right? Like, I'll give like one example of like one biblical prophecy about that. Like, this is just a general one, right? I'm not saying this whether Jesus was born in Bethlehem or not born in Bethlehem, but the fact that there's a prophecy of the Messiah being born in Bethlehem, right, makes it way more likely that whoever's claiming to be the Messiah says they were born in Bethlehem, because we already know the prophecy. Like, prophecies can become self-fulfilling, I guess, right? So it might seem cool that a prophecy is happening when it's not really a prophecy. It's just that everyone knows that the thing is supposed to happen, so then you start making it happen. Now, you've been showing me some really interesting clips, right? Like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know who the hell this guy is you've been showing me, Keanu, in the WhatsApp chat. I'm like, okay, how much of this is BS and how much of this is just him like getting lucky? Like, I don't know. But those are my like initial feelings about psychics and prophecies. So yeah, talk about it, right? How do you feel about them, Keanu? Are they all real? How do you tell who's not real?
No. Here's what's interesting about this. And it's funny, right? So let me ask you this: based on the clips that I sent you, how could, and we can get into this a little bit more detail if you want to later. I mean, how could something like that be BS though? Like, where do you BS something by predicting it in that niche, nuanced of a fashion and be accurate that consistently, right? Like, it's interesting, right? I think that's where.
Right?
No, that's a separate question, right? I think you have to solve for, when you're having questions about biblical prophecy, I think you have to solve for a couple of different things. So before we go into prophecy, guys, let's talk about what really even got us to this point in the first place, right? So how many of you guys who here is familiar? Jonah, are you even familiar with the attacks that have been happening, right, in the last couple of months? The attack that took place. Bro, you ever do this? So legitimately had to go to Costco today because we had a nail in the tire, right? So had to go to the doctor's appointment, had to go to Costco, and Costco has samples. It was sample day at Costco. So I grab a sample of a chocolate that was in its package. That chocolate is now all over our keys. And Yvonne keeps complaining about this ketchup I had her carry around. But yeah, I took the keys out the pocket because they were stabbing me, and then I realized that they're covered in chocolate, which is gross. So
do you just keep food in your pockets at any point?
Okay, have you ever been to Costco, Jonah?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, do you grab the samples? I feel like samples are standard practice. This is like really fancy dark chocolate, right? It's on the list of things I could eat. Now, not anymore. It's in my pocket. Apparently, I had.
Why are you like? I love how you're like fucking saving it for later. Usually, you eat the sample right there.
First of all, don't
stuff in chocolate,
right? No. So what had happened was we were
handfuls of chocolate.
So
like what I'm imagining.
Let me no, don't judge. But this is a cup of ketchup that we have because we got. It's a long story, but here's okay. First of all, let's not be judgmental. Judgmental. Second of all, we weren't there to shop. We were there to get our tire looked at. But while you're there, that's how they get you, right? And we needed a couple things. So next thing you know, we both got our hands like crazy full with stuff because we didn't get a cart because we didn't actually intend on shopping. But they're like, oh shoot, we really need this. Oh shoot, we really need this. So, but you can't sacrifice the samples even though your hands are full. So we had to stop, put things down. I grabbed the chocolate, started to open it, realized, shoot, we got to get out of here because I got things I got to do. Put the chocolate in my pocket, and now it's a topic of conversation on the podcast. That's how that played out.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
So prophecies and psychics.
So 2025. Are you familiar with the attacks that have taken place? How much do you know about these things?
I don't know much about them, right? I've been hearing them in passing, right? To be honest, and I watch the things that you watch, right? How like they're saying it's like a terrorist attack, like that was in it was one in New Orleans, right? And there was one in I forgot where the other one was. Not much is the answer.
It's pronounced New Orleans.
How do you pronounce it? It's not New Orleans.
I don't. Well, if you're from there, I think it's pronounced Nolens. Nolens. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not from there.
Okay.
I don't. I say New Orleans. How do you say this word? I'm all. I have to bear with. Let's go. Comments. Let's go. All right, here we go. What's the word I'm looking for? How do you pronounce that word right there?
Coupon.
Coupon. So you don't say coupon.
Who the fuck says coupon?
Coupon says coupon.
Yo,
it's not
I'm
a
sorry.
coupon.
Hey, I've never heard in my entire life coupon. That's crazy.
That's
just wild.
It's not, bro.
Just not how you say that.
She's standing her ground too. She's like, "Nah, it's a coupon. It's not a coupon. It's never been a coupon. Nor do I believe it will be a coupon."
In my entire life.
If you're a coupon person, say me in the chat so at least we know that there's somebody out there that sides with Yvonne on this. But it's a thing. Apparently, like coupon is like a thing. There's like a whole tribe of people who are coupon people. It's a lot of work. In any case, so let's go back to this. So I'm pulling up these. Hold on, I'm pulling up these.
And there were also some like conspiracy theories around it, right? Like it's right before Trump's about to get into office.
I was hoping that Gianmarco would just send us information, but all he sent us was the conspiracy side. That's fine. I'm gonna share it. So, long story short, New Orleans, and then there is Las Vegas. There were a couple of interesting things about these attacks that I think are worth noting. But I'm just gonna play the 3 videos that Gianmarco has here. I have not seen these videos, guys. So if they suck, DM Gianmarco, but they're not going to suck because he has fantastic taste. He's a director and an artist. So put some respect on his name. All right, hold on. Share screen. Former CIA. This guy's, I like his. You ever watch this guy's podcast? Tom Ryan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got really, really cool.
How certain are you that we'll see something in 2025?
I'm certain we'll either have embassy attacks in 2025 or the Homeland attack or both.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. So, Sarah Adams, former CIA targeter.
Well, that was completely unhelpful. Thank you for that, Gianmarco.
Yeah, I could. Wait. Also, just so people know about the attacks, basically, right? Like, we can watch a video from NBC. But yes, basically, yeah, I'll share my screen. So basically, we'll just quickly watch an NBC one. Right, and I just pulled this up real quick.
I can't hear it, Brusky.
You can't hear it? Hold on. Why couldn't you hear it? Hold on. Share audio. There we go. My bad.
This attack. It comes terror attack New Year's Day with some shocking new details about the explosives that experts say were used in this attack. It comes again as New Orleans is marking exactly 1 week since those horrific moments. And WDSU's Elizabeth Kubel is live for us near the corner of Canal and Bourbon with this newly uncovered information by NBC. Elizabeth.
Exactly, Randy. We are learning just how catastrophic the terrorist was planning on this being. And it comes, as you mentioned, exactly 1 week now since that horrendous attack. In pretty much every day since, we have showed you this live, this growing memorial here at the corner of Canal and Bourbon. It is continuing to grow. Remember, it started as 14 singular yellow roses, and now day by day, pictures, messages, and candles are added. And it comes as we now know just how much more hurt the man responsible was trying to cause right here. According to NBC News, he built 2 bombs using what investigators believe was an explosive so powerful that they could have sprayed shrapnel hundreds of yards and potentially killed or wounded hundreds of people. Remember, those bombs, so fortunately, did not detonate on New Year's Day, but experts say the devices built with a compound believed to be RDX would have been so devastating. It comes as people continue right now to pay respects to the 14 innocent lives that were taken.
What happened is, I mean, I think it
Okay. Gives us an idea of what happened, I feel like, from that. I can't hear you. We lost audio on you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I pushed mute. Yeah, Jamarco. I came from Jamarco. He came back because apparently I did it backwards. I did it in the wrong order. And so he wants me to do it in the right order. So apparently the top one is a good one to start with. That is not conspiracy. Even though the first word on the video says conspiracy, but I'm going to take his word for it. Jamarco, my guy, bro. It's we go figure this out.
Okay, we could have some conspiracy on it. We got what the official story is. There was a bomb that killed some people.
Okay, cool. This is the Vegas one. So let's see how this plays.
Conspiracy bandwagon very easily. But how many coincidences are too many coincidences? When it comes to the twin tragedies, on day 1 of 2025, a mass murder by truck in New Orleans, a truck bomb in Las Vegas. It's just hard to ignore that the 2 perpetrators had a whole lot in common, as did their attacks. So far, the official line is the events are not connected, period. End of story. They are not connected. But if your spidey senses are telling you that it sure doesn't feel that way, my friends, you are not alone. I am with you, and we have other friends too. I want to run down the list of coincidences. Both attacks occurred on New Year's Day, within hours of each other. Both targets were party cities, New Orleans and Las Vegas. Both perpetrators chose trucks as their weapons. More specifically, they both rented electric trucks using a budget car sharing app called Turo. They both drove long distances from their home states.
Pause for a second.
Attacks in those party cities.
How so fucking mad would you be if you were Turoing like your electric truck or whatever, and it gets blown
That's
up?
a big L.
He's so pissed. I'd be like, bro,
I just joined the Turo community. I'm still making Turo community payments, and my shit.
I would be so mad. I'd be like, wow, I hate this.
Yeah, you can't get mad at your Turo coach because they did not. That's not something you could predict.
Cities. Both vehicles had multiple guns on board, weapons, and explosives inside. And both had a means to detonate their explosives. And both attacks were carried out by decorated U.S. Army veterans. And believe it or not, they both received the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal. Let that sink in. Talk about a slap in the face. Both of these service members shared more in common than that. They had both served at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. They both deployed to Afghanistan in 2009. And they both served at the same military base. Both suspects died during the attacks, something that looked like it had to have been planned. This is a lot of coincidences to take into account. But despite that list, the investigators say it is still too soon to tell if those 2 attacks are connected or if the suspects even knew each other. And I will give the authorities this. It might just be because the agents today said that they have yet to go through the digital footprint of the guy on the right, the Vegas suspect, to see who he's been talking to before he decided to go ahead and explode a cyber truck at the front door of the Trump Hotel.
Okay, that's interesting.
It could be connected. I don't know. It kind of depends. We just
Let's-
like it's like all those things are interesting, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're connected. It's just you
No,
just have to
it
keep
doesn't.
digging.
Let's play the last one and let's see what this last one has to say. That was the one just to be clear, the one that we just watched was the one that had nothing to do with conspiracies, according to Jim Marco. Let's listen to this.
To the same army base. You're telling me that two men that worked at the same army base in the same time went and rented trucks separately from the same rental company and committed horrible acts on the same day within hours apart is a total coincidence. And add on top of it, you are telling me that a man who tried to take out the president at his golf course just a few months ago visited that same exact army base that these two men worked at in the same year 147 times. He visited it 147 times. I think we need to ask what's going on at Fort Bragg, because no matter which way you slice it, to me, all of those things, how much do you believe in coincidence? I don't believe in it that much. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying that it is something to say about. And I think that if you are sitting here and thinking about all those things and saying, too, that you should go watch Sarah Adams' interview on the Sean Ryan show. She's a former CIA intelligence officer. I think that if you are interested in the current events of what's happening and you also have some questions that you would like to be answered, I think you should go watch Sarah Adams' interview.
And the third one was what we already watched.
The third one was the one that we already watched, which I guess is why he referenced that particular person, which is fine. Interesting, right? Like, so I don't really know what the conspiracy is associated with that. I don't know that I'm really in a position that I can speak on that. But I will say that it is interesting, right? Because those things happened on the exact same day, right? They were both party cities, right? Vegas and New Orleans are known for parties.
There. Like that's kind of weird how it was done. It was done in the same way. They both worked at Fort Bragg. Like that's enough coincidence where I'm going.
They're both Army Rangers, right? Special Forces. There's a lot of interesting coincidences. So I think when we talk about this guy, so when Jonah and I was talking about what we were going to discuss today, I thought it was interesting to bring this up. I think going into topics like this are going to become important in maybe coming months, coming weeks, if stuff like this continues to happen. Hopefully it doesn't. But what really caught our attention about this is where this particular podcast may take a left turn from what a lot of people may be expecting. Because in the midst of all of this, there is somebody, maybe a couple of somebodies, but there is somebody that actually predicted these events and said they were going to happen. And this is the exact same person who said that some other things was going to happen. Same guy predicted Donald Trump getting shot, but he also predicted that Donald Trump would get shot in the ear. So it became really interesting because when I presented that information to Jonah, I was like, hey, what do you think about this? Because I got this guy that I found that is legitimate. He's on record predicting a lot of different things. What do you think about stuff like that? So Jonah's default was now it's probably BS. But then I sent him the videos, right? So this is where it gets interesting. So out of curiosity, Jeremy, Katie, anybody that's watching right now, what do you guys think about this? Do you think psychics are real? Do you think prophecy is real? What are your thoughts? Real or BS? Hold on. Let me put a poll on my YouTube. I'm going to actually put a poll out here because I want to hear people think. So you think prophecy, you think psychics are BS, Jonah? And what was your thoughts on prophecy?
Prophecy, the thing with prophecy is that generally, if you do a prophecy, his are really interesting. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of want to catch him. I want to hear. The thing is here's the issue with prophecy. If you prophesize enough, eventually you'll be right. Right? If you make 1,500 prophecies, you will eventually be right about something. So in my head, the question is okay. How often are you right? Right? I feel like that's and it's I don't think 100% right is necessary. I don't think anyone's 100% right ever. This is exactly what I think. This is basically my opinion about it. Is like, the hard part is especially if you know the prophecy, then someone can fulfill the prophecy for you, right? And if you keep giving out prophecies, eventually one of them will be right? So yeah, that's kind of like the issue with prophecy a lot of times.
Okay. Very, very interesting. So, prophecy 100% as long as time isn't a factor. Well, that's really, really interesting, because that becomes, so let me play devil's advocate or biblical advocate. I'm not sure what advocate I'm playing. I got to stop putting my hands in my pocket because I keep touching the chocolate. Is what happens.
You still have chocolate in your pocket? Like, what the fuck? Like,
it's smeared, bro. It's smeared in my pocket.
You like wear different pants? Like, what are you doing?
Nah, it's in my hoodie pocket. Okay. Anyways, so here's the thing, right? This is the same thing with, like, if we're on the vein of like biblical prophecy, this is the same scapegoat that people use when they're talking about God or the Bible overall, right? People who are uneducated but have absolutely no knowledge on the topic, especially when it comes to like the Bible being real, feel overwhelmingly confident to say, nah, it's BS because it's been translated. You have no clue what you're talking about, right? That answer shows anybody who knows anything about the topic, you have no education on this topic, because that's just an extremely uneducated response. And so what happens is it becomes easy to make claims that are difficult to refute because it sounds logical as a knee-jerk response. But then when you really put thought into it, it doesn't really play out. Because yes, there's logic to the statement that prophecy will be right as long as time isn't a factor, because someone can go and self-fulfill it. But then the next question becomes, that depends on how difficult it is to fulfill the prophecy in question. If I prophesy that Jonah's going to take a shit, well, that's not that difficult, right? At some point, he's going to have to drop a deuce, right? Does that make me a prophet? Probably not, right? But if I say that something as specific as Donald Trump is going to have an assassination attempt on his life, and that's going to get shot, he's going to get shot on the ear. And what I saw in my vision was the bullet going by the ear and the blood splattering on his face and him dropping to his knees. That's a different level of specificity that is much more difficult to predict in advance and call it just a coincidence, right? Would you agree with that, Jonah?
To an extent, yeah.
So I had Jamarco look this up. Let's just give you a little bit of a context. Jonah doesn't poop. Jonahs don't poop. Do Jonahs poop?
No one knows.
Interesting. All right, that's gonna be our next podcast topic. Do Jonahs poop? If not,
it's definitely not our next podcast topic.
Oh, okay. All right. So I had Jonah look. I had Jamarco. He's just full of shit, is what it is. I had Jamarco look this up, and he looked up the statistics on biblical prophecy. And AI, the first response that popped up on Google. So take that with what that is. It says that there's about 2,000 of the Bible's 2,500 prophecies have been fulfilled. So out of the 2,500 prophecies, over 2,000 have been fulfilled. So now then, by definition, okay, that's a lot of prophecies that you have to accurately fulfill. How vague or specific were these prophecies, right? That becomes a specific question. Well, when you get to the specificity of the prophecies, that's when you start really getting to the point to where it's like, okay, you're going to have a really, really hard time. So there's a guy, his name was Peter Stoner, I believe. He was a professor of mathematics and astronomy. What he did is he calculated the probability of Jesus fulfilling just 8 of the specific prophecies by chance. Do you know what the mathematical likelihood of the prophecies that we know historically to have been proven were?
I have no idea.
1 in 100 quadrillion.
Well, yeah, I mean, he literally resurrected. How many fucking people resurrect, dude? Like, yeah, like I get you. Like, obviously,
I think that was less on the severity or the difficulty of the prophecy, but on the accuracy of the fact. Because not only do you got to raise from the dead, but you got to predict that a person's going to raise from the dead. So by this same logic, someone had to have the wherewithal to have the stones to say, you know what? Somebody going to die and come back under all of these specific criteria. And then that thing has to happen, right? So it is not just the significance of the difficulty of the task that was prophesied, but the fact that someone accurately predicted something that difficult in advance. So the Bible is one of those things, and statisticians have done this a lot. I don't know if you've looked into this. It is a very interesting thing to look into, but statisticians have looked into the legitimacy of the possibilities of the things that are written in the Bible being accurately prophesied. The Bible is about, some people say, about 30 or so percent prophecy. And of the 2,500, over 2,000 have been fulfilled, according to this thing that Jamarco just sent, which I guess now we're getting into a really interesting thing where, like, okay, are we in the territory where you and Jeremy are talking about, where it's all coincidence? I think once you start naming things like that, it becomes really, really difficult. Okay. So does this change the view of prophecy? I don't know. And I guess in your opinion, does it?
Can I I'm going to play devil's advocate to your devil's advocate, I guess.
Okay, you're going to one up the devil's advocacy?
Yeah. It's like, who's the real devil?
Can we advocate for somebody else? Can we be Jeremy's advocate?
Yeah, Jeremy's advocate.
Okay.
Here's the thing that's like my problem specifically with biblical prophecy, right? Is the issue also is okay, X person says a prophecy. King David says a prophecy in Psalms or whatever, right? This prophecy has been taught to Jews, I guess, historically, for thousands of years, right? If I was making up a story, let's say, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, we can get into whether, I'm not saying like Jesus' story is fully made up. It'd be pretty easy for me to start fulfilling all the prophecies. Be like, yeah, he was born in Bethlehem. Yes, he was born of a virgin mother, right? The hard part is like with the Bible is like, how do I know if that's actually what happened, right? Was this biblical prophecy actually fulfilled? It was 2,000 years ago. That's the hard part with 2,000-year-old fulfillment of prophecies, right? That's the hard part, at least for me, where it's like, how do I truly know what's written in the New Testament happened? Or they just lie. Like maybe he was born in Nazareth and that's where he was raised because he was born there. And then someone later was like, oh shit, we have a prophecy where he's got to be born in Bethlehem.
So let's use something that's a little less. Let's use something that's a little bit less cryptic, right? You're familiar with the Babylonian Empire, right? Most people are familiar historically with the Babylonian Empire. Are you familiar with history at all? Okay.
Yeah.
So are you aware that, you may not know this, but Babylon was conquered by the Medes and Persians. You're familiar with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he says reluctantly. So
no,
fun fact.
I know this. I remember I'm sick. You know this, not the audience. All I'm sick is my throat, so I'm saving my words as much as I can. So I'm gonna do it if it's a confirmation thing.
So in the book of Isaiah and in the book of Jeremiah, it was prophesied that it would be overthrown. It was prophesied that it would be overthrown 150 to 200 years before it happened. And it was prophesied the way it would be overthrown. 200 years later, Medes and Persians came in, overthrew it in a very, very similar fashion, right? Israel being separated and then reunited as a nation. We all know that happened. That's happened in recent history. That was prophesied thousands of years in advance, right? The destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Jesus himself is on record saying that the temple would be destroyed. 70 years later, the temple was destroyed. And he literally said that not one stone will be remaining on another. When he said it, he was so overwhelmingly rebuked for that, because that's like saying, yeah, the White House is about to get fully knocked down, bro. Right? But it's even more significant because the temple meant more to the Hebrew people at the time than the White House does to Americans, right? So that was a huge and lofty statement. If you look up just the prophecies surrounding Israel and the likelihood of the nation of Israel not only surviving the amounts of opposition that it's encountered over the course of its existence, but thriving in the capacity that its people has, right? And there's a lot of debates right now regarding that. It's not what I'm talking about. But just that nation in and of itself, its entire journey was prophesied millennia ago. There was way more playing against the likelihood of Jerusalem being reestablished as a nation, way more against it than there was for it. So in that situation, how do you argue for, well, someone can just go fulfill that? Well, nah, bro. Somebody can't just go randomly reestablish a nation because they saw it written in a book of prophecy, right? There's a lot that have to go into play for that.
So I don't mean like randomly, right? Like I mean like, okay. It's a huge thing in Judaism. As a Jew, I can say this idea of going back to Israel, right? Like this whole thing, Passover, there's this whole thing where it's like, you literally say next year in Jerusalem, right? It's a thing that's taught for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. At some point, we're all going to go back to Jerusalem, right? We're going to go back to the homeland, right? So since this is like a thing we're taught for thousands of years, it naturally makes a motivation for Jews to want to reestablish Israel. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm not saying, and I get your point too, just because someone wants something doesn't mean it's going to happen. Like you still have to do a lot of things in order to make that happen. And it was like a really rare historical thing that was happening that allowed Israel to even be established, right? So like, I guess my point is that like, I just don't know. Because it's not like a prophecy is being randomly fulfilled. I knew the prophecy beforehand, and then I can start working towards getting it fulfilled. That's the hard part with especially ancient prophecies. Like you remember the whole red heifers thing you sent me?
Yes.
That's somebody trying, like, that wasn't natural. They're bringing in red heifers from America to the temple. I think it's a kind of a, and I don't want to say this in a condescending fashion because I don't mean it that way, but I can't think of a better word, but it's kind of a silly degradation of the power behind that, because that's like saying, I predict that in 3 seasons from now, 5 seasons from now, the Chicago Bears are going to win the Super Bowl, and they're going to win it with exactly this many yards, exactly this many things, exactly this, and here's going to be the score is going to be 13-5, right? Well, that sounds way more specific than just Israel being reestablished.
No, but it's not, because the representation of the amount of things that need to happen for the course of the next 3 years for just that team to get to the Super Bowl, if it's not rigged, and for it to play out that way, you could argue, well, yeah, that they knew that was prophesied, so they just put in the work to make it happen. But who cares? Even if they successfully put in the work to make it happen, does that discredit the accuracy of the prediction? Absolutely not. Because the fact that
how vague, I think you're right. It depends on how vague the prophecy is versus specific. Like if the prophecy was the state of Israel will be reestablished exactly 1947 years after the birth of like something like that, that would be fucking crazy.
My advice to you, because we don't have time to do it on this podcast, bro, I think you need to look into some of these prophecies, bro, and the details that have to go into it, right? Because first of all, let's just say we were talking about the prophecy surrounding Israel. The likelihood of Israel surviving what they survived historically to be reestablished in and of itself is what many would argue a miraculous feat. Miraculous, right? As miraculous as getting a football game that accurate because of those details, right? So again, right, you can't discredit those things and say, yeah, but somebody made it happen. Yeah, but the fact that someone was capable of pulling off such a lofty feat, and many people also predicted it, or one person also predicted it, there is a point where you can't, like, you have to just give credit where credit's due and give credence to say, look, I don't care. Like, again, we would be impressed if someone predicted that Super Bowl. We would be impressed if someone predicted who's going to end up in this Super Bowl. If someone said, hey, I already know who's in the playoffs. Here's who's going to take this next Super Bowl next month, and here's going to be the score. That person's going to make a ton of money. Yeah. Just by being able to predict something a month in advance with all of the variables. 3,000 years, 4,000 years to just say, oh, well, somebody just planned it because they knew what was written. That's just, it's really, really not giving credence to the work and the difficulty that goes into millennia passing and something like that still being able to come to pass when arguably much, much larger and stronger empires did not survive.
Maybe it's hard to tell. Like I think it depends on how specific the claim is, right? Biblical prophecies they don't usually have like some of them do. Some of them have time things, right? Like I know there's the biblical prophecy on, and this is like the one against Jews, and like this was like an interesting one. It's like the Messiah has to come before the destruction of the second temple, right? Generally, prophecies aren't usually time specific, is what I've noticed. So it goes back to what Jeremy said earlier, where like I just feel like eventually someone fulfills it. Somebody like literally what they were doing was bringing in the red heifers from Texas and shipping them to Israel, right? So I don't know. Like it's like one of those things where it's like it's just hard to tell, right? If something's more specific, that gets much more interesting to me. And then like how often, and then I'm curious, like how often is their prophecy right? So I think it's be a good part. I don't know if you have it up, Keanu. Let's watch the clips of the guy that you were showing me in the WhatsApp chat.
Pulling him up right now.
This guy's really interesting. That's why I went, because I was initially like, no way. And then he showed it to me. I'm like, damn, all right, well, that does seem kind of, that's weird at the very least.
Okay, so I'm going to play these two clips. Some of you guys may have seen this guy going around. Some of you guys may not. I sent Jonah the smaller clips, but the smaller clips that were turned into reels were after the event. And Jonah being Jonah was like, nah, fam, I need to see the dated ones. So the clips I'm about to show you are longer. I'm going to have to go to the timestamp. But these are marked and dated, uploaded on YouTube well before the events. So we'll start with the first one, which was Trump getting an assassination attempt. So let me pull this one up. Guys, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think this means? Hold on. 10:35. 10.
I'm sharing like one of your screens. I don't know if this is the right screen though.
Yeah, I'm about to play it. Stop screen. Share screen. Here we go. All right. Give us your thoughts, guys.
Wave of patriotism coming out. He said there's going to be a new wave of patriotism coming out, and that's whenever I saw Trump, and I saw a red wave coming out of Michigan, and then I saw Oklahoma, and there was embers of people, and they were all on these. They had torches all throughout Oklahoma, and they were raising up these torches that looked like fire, and they were bringing forth a new patriotism upon the nation. And it was coming, it was being birthed, and it just kept spreading like fire all throughout America, all throughout. And I saw Trump rising up, and then I saw an attempt on his life. This bullet flew by his ear, and it came so close to his head that it busted his eardrum. And I saw he fell to his knees during this time frame, and he started worshiping the Lord. He got radically born again during this time frame. I'm talking, people say he's saved now, but he becomes really on fire for Jesus, for what I saw coming.
Okay, so I think we can stop it there, unless there was something that you remember needed to get played after that.
No, not really.
Okay, so you want to talk about this one before we go to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, here's my thing. It's like, how many prophecies does this guy make? Like, did he get lucky? The thing is, I gotta watch him more, honestly, because it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, he's right. I mean, I don't know what he meant by red wave in Michigan. I like looked at the electoral map because I was just curious. Definitely went for Trump. It was 50. It was like 49% to 48%. Red waves, like, I don't know what that means in this case. So that could count as that. And then I don't know what the fuck he's talking about with the tiki torches. Like, unless that's like a prophecy that comes true later, right? That's the hard thing. It's like pretty cryptic. It is pretty wild on this prophecy. The question is, I guess, like, how often is he right? And how often would someone have to be right in order for it to be more than just guessing and feelings?
Yeah, but here, let's break that down a little bit, right? Because now all of a sudden you're setting a really, really high standard for something that 5 seconds ago you didn't even believe existed. So if you 5 seconds ago didn't believe it existed, then how, in fairness, like how are you qualified to set the criteria for how it should operate in order for it to be respected? Let's say this guy does 0 other prophecies or 100 other prophecies, and all of them are wrong. Who cares? He still predicted something extremely specific, and that came to pass. In and of itself, that has its own, at least, standard of merit that it should be inspected in a vacuum, independently, right? Jeremy and extreme intelligence and vocabulary says this guy is stupid. I appreciate your intellectual contribution to the conversation.
There is some merit to making a really specific prediction, right? Like for instance, let's go back to your football example, right? Let's say I predict the Lions are going to win by exactly 17-3 next week, and that via 2 touchdowns and a field goal, right? That's a pretty specific prediction. Let's say I get it right. I guess my question to you, Keanu, from your worldview is, am I a prophet then? Because I made one really good prediction, right? So I guess do you get where I'm coming from then?
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? So just because I'm speaking to this from your perspective, right? And maybe the perspective, what I'm assuming is the majority of the audience, assuming that we live in this world where these things don't exist, and what our doctor tells us science is probably right, and we should just listen to them. My opinion, that is a very limited and naive outlook on the planet, right? I think the majority of what we believe we know on the planet represents a very small fraction of how our world and universe really exists. And I think it's really, really naive and silly for anybody to just cancel out an idea that seems forward to their finite and extremely limited brain, and then feel like they're qualified to scoff at something simply because they don't understand, right? That scoffing is not a reflection of your intelligence. It's a reflection of your ignorance, right? Because you're simply stating this is outside of my scope, and because I don't understand it, I'm going to mock it, and I'm going to reduce the conversation to my current understanding of the topic. Well, if your current understanding is limited, then all you're doing is limiting the capacity of the conversation. That's naive, right? And I think most humans operate like this. We whittle down the world and existence to this little tiny vacuum that really just reflects our comfort zone or the way we were raised. And when we talk about politics, we can understand this intellectually. Oh, well, you're just like that because you were raised in Texas. So, of course, you're going to have a gun and you're going to believe in the Second Amendment. You're from California. So, of course, you're going to, right? And we can understand that intellectually. This just goes to show how, as amazing as humans can be pretty fucking stupid sometimes as well, because we're not smart enough to understand that when it comes to topics like this, hey, Pumpkin, you've never learned about this before. So because it's foreign to you, you're going to call it dumb and you're going to dismiss it. And you're going to say it's not real. Maybe consider the possibility of understanding that there is an entire world where this stuff operates and exists and is respected. So before you ignorantly go and discredit something, maybe do your homework and actually know what the fuck you're talking about. But people don't do that because we're emotional. We don't actually like learning things. So I'll say that to say this. Let's start with some actual foundation, because I'm asking you your opinion, but you don't really know a lot about this. So psychics. To be clear, police departments around the nation use psychics, and psychics have been credited for solving multiple crimes accurately, finding bodies, finding kidnapped victims by using their psychic abilities, right? There are multiple celebrity psychics on TV that will accurately, to a T, describe many, many things about you, your family, and all these different things. Throughout much of the Cold War, there was an entire remote viewing program. Are you familiar with this remote viewing program? So the remote viewing, this is not an exaggeration, Jonah. Tell me on a 1 to 10 how crazy this sounds. They would hire people in, and this was their job. Your job, Jonah, is to sit in this chair. And I'm going to teach you how to leave your body so that your spirit can go to secret bunkers in Russia so you can steal all of their military secrets.
Yeah, that's
1 to 10.
crazy.
Pretty fucking okay, yeah. CIA documents have already been released. This 100% happened with excessive accuracy.
Wait,
multiple
can I interrupt you just so I understand what you're saying exactly? Are you saying that they tried to do that, or are you saying that they actually found a secret from doing that?
By many, it is credited that the Cold War was won because of this program.
Okay, that's crazy.
No. This is not a. That's what we're talking about right now.
Wow.
Yes.
I literally know nothing about it, but that sounds insane. Like we should do a podcast episode on that. So how was it called? Remote viewing?
Viewing. This is a whole thing, and many credit the winning of the Cold War to remote viewing because we had access to Russian intelligence there was no way to have access to. Why? Because the remote viewers were going there. There are many people who have been on podcasts right now to this day that say that they are part of current remote viewing. Appreciate you, bro. They're a part of current remote viewing programs in places like Antarctica. And remote viewing has gotten so advanced that they have remote viewers that learn how to operate in the spiritual realm so that because the natural detection systems, the natural security systems can't see you because you're not in your physical body, they had to create security systems to detect you when you were remote viewing. So places like Antarctica and Antarctic bases have security systems that can actually detect remote viewing.
You mentioned this before when we were talking about Antarctica. I remember this now.
Yeah. This is a thing. You know where they started remote viewing? By psychics, right? So is this true? You can go into a big conversation whether or not that's true. Here's my take on it. If we're talking about biblical prophecy, the Bible talks a lot about these things. It's my opinion that, and you have to understand, okay, so then here's the question. If somebody can do that, where does that gift come from? Right? Let's assume for the sake of argument that all of this stuff is real. How does somebody do it? Is it a gift or is it a talent? Right? What is it? What are your thoughts, Jonah? Assuming it's true, how would you factor that? How do we begin to know?
I know so little about it that I don't know how. I don't know. Like, okay, so I mean, from my worldview so far in life, you like, how can I like my original question to you, which I don't think you've answered yet, which is okay, is if I like I could get lucky and predict something, right? What makes the difference between like a prophet and someone who's getting lucky with predicting something? Is it just a number of accurate? Is it the number of times they predict something, right? You get what?
No.
That's like my issue.
This is why I brought this up, right? So there's actually rules for this. So I'm going to give you my answer to the question that I just asked you. What people don't realize, especially people who have topics, like all of this stuff is in the Bible, right? So it is my belief. I will say this from a scriptural perspective. The Bible does a great job of explaining all of these things, what they are, how they operate, and how people can operate in them. Many people believe who understand these things that people who are psychics simply have the prophetic gift, but they just don't understand that it's a prophetic gift, but it's a gift that they were born with. And whether they understand the things of God and use it within the capacity of that realm or not, it doesn't change the fact that this is a gift that they were born with. And so when you are born with the gift that you understand all the stuff that you have no reason to understand why you understand it, and no one tells you, this is why many psychics have a lot of struggles and they have these issues and they have all these, because you're seeing an aspect of the world that everybody tells you you're crazy, because everybody tells you, like what we've heard today, that, oh, that's not real. They're just using their limited experience. Again, just their naivety to think that they understand everything about the planet when they don't. And so these people struggle and they have to go and figure it out on their own. And some of them use their gifts and for good, and some of them don't, and some of them just try to hide it, right? But I believe that all of these things are real gifts that are given to human beings, because what I believe is that we are spiritual beings in natural bodies. I don't think we are human bodies with spirits. I think we are spirits with human bodies. And when you start to look at the world from that lens, it changes everything, because spirits are eternal. That means we came from somewhere. And then we're going to be somewhere after that, if that's true. Okay, well, if that spirit was put into a body and it was given gifts, that means there's possibly some sort of a plan for these gifts. These can be used. And so if you look in the Bible, that actually talks into prophecy. There's actually, I won't go into too much detail, but the Bible talks about 3 different ways. It talks about the office of the prophet, a person who is a prophet. This is who they are. This is the only thing they're meant to do on this planet. There is the gift of prophecy, which means that you're gifted in this area, but it's not your primary focus. And then there's a spirit of prophecy, which means it's just something you can do, something you can tap into, but it's not a part of who you are. It's just something you can do periodically, right? So if we were to use this in natural realms, like some people may be extremely intuitive people sometimes, but sometimes they're not. And, you know, but then some people are just always, they can't turn it off, right? So there's layers to this thing. So I believe if we use those rules as a foundation, then yes, there are rules to it. To your question, according to biblical prophecy, it is very, very dangerous for someone to proclaim to be a prophet and not be accurate. There's consequences for that in the Bible. So for people like a guy like this, who claims to be a prophetic person, if you listen to them, you will hear them if they are, in my opinion, someone that I would trust as a person who claims to hear from God. You get into really murky waters when people start saying stuff like that, right? It's real, and I'm agree with you. It's real murky. People be saying stuff. You can't listen to stuff that everybody says, right? And so one of the things that, because I've been a part of this world for more than 2 decades, and I've known people, I have taken classes on stuff like this. I'm very, very versed and familiar in this world, right? So what I've learned in my experience is I listen to how people preface themselves. If they're really, really cautious about their words, if they treat it with the respect that it's given, and they're really, really humble about it, that usually gives me a little bit more credence to what they're about to say. And I haven't listened to a huge amount about this guy. I'm going to be completely honest. The few things I have heard about him, I will say that he is usually, in my experience, and again, I haven't watched a lot of his stuff, so I don't know the guy. But what I've noticed is he's very, very cautious. Like when he does it, he's not like, oh, God says this and you better listen. And then, oh, by the way, send me your stuff and I'll send you your miracle water, right? Like he's not doing that, right? Not against anybody who does that. That's just not what he does.
Miracle water for sale?
Yeah, sure, some people do. I'm sure somebody, he might. I don't know. Jack, maybe we should order some. But his approach is more like, oh, okay, all right, God. Is this what you're telling me? I don't know.
Be right back. I gotta get water. I'm dying here. I am dying.
No, just leave your camera there. You don't need to full screen me. Nobody.
Whatever, dude. I think it looks weird with me just not there.
Okay. Spirit meats on a stick. Massive Cool Factor says spirit meats on a stick. I like that. Yeah, it's really, really interesting, right? Like people have different takes on this. And it's so funny to me how weird people get when you talk about stuff like this. Like automatically when you start having conversations like this, you're put into a category. And it's just naive, in my opinion. Like, why are we like this? Why are we like this? That somebody can be really, really cool. We enjoy talking to them. But the second they talk about something a little bit esoteric, all of a sudden they become weird. Like, are we really, really that naive and limited to how the world's supposed to operate that we can't expect anything that's outside of our comfort zone to be real until it becomes popular? Like aliens. Aliens used to be the same taboo of what we're talking about right now. It's less taboo now. Why? Well, it's not because the topic changed. It's because it became more popular. Like, why are we so weak that we can't acknowledge conversations until they're popular first? Like, stop being so cared about being accepted.
Hold on. Because, like, I feel like, I'm going to be honest, I feel like my question still isn't really answered. So, like,
I was in the process of answering it, but then you felt the need to walk away, zoom in my face, and get some water. Are you okay, bro?
Dude. I'm sick. No, I'm dying here. I'm like, my throat's killing me, bro.
Did you take some Dayquil or something, bro?
No. I don't believe in that bullshit. Come on, dude. Aren't you not on my side? The Dayquil is just a government conspiracy to get little micro robots in my bloodstream.
That's exactly what it is. That's why you should take it. Micro robots make you better. You ever never seen the Transformers?
You're pro government. You ever see Transform? Can you transform because you take Dayquil?
That's a different podcast.
Sorry,
Reggie was going.
Now with your explanation.
There's rules. Yes, the answer to your question is there is rules. And there are, so if somebody's going to be proclaiming to be a prophet and they predicting a bunch of stuff that don't come to pass, the Bible says they're a fraud and stay away from them. So I do think there are criteria. But then my question is, what are you doing, right? Are you out here saying, just says the Lord, this is what's about to happen? Well, then you better be real cautious, homie, because if what you say doesn't come to pass, then you about to either put yourself in a bad position, you're just going to look bad, right? And you ain't making yourself or God or anybody else look good. So then the question becomes, okay, well then how does they approach it? And this guy, I don't think he approaches it like that. I've never heard him be like, oh, this is going to happen and you better listen because God, this. What I normally hear him say is like, okay, like in the one you'll see, the next one we'll play, he's just praying. He just like in the prayer, he was praying on video and he was like, oh, okay. I just saw something, like he saw like a vision in his head. And you hear him, all he is doing is just saying, I'm praying and I'm seeing a picture, right? So if you and me are sitting here right now, we decided we wanted to pray on the podcast, and then all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, Quijano, I just saw this weird picture in my head. I don't know where it came from, but it was a picture that, there was a mail truck that was going to go, and it was going to run over 3 cows, and it was going to be this weird, that's a weird thing to see in a vision, right? I'm like, yeah, that's a weird thing. And then 3 days later, it happens on the news. Well, are you proclaiming to be a prophet? No, you simply said that you saw something while you were praying. Well, how do we describe you at that point? Does that make you a fraud? Does that make it bullshit? Like, in your opinion, how do you classify that if something like that were to happen?
So, like, in my head, that would be really interesting, right? If I had a picture, here's the question, right? So I'm just going to go off my personal experience, right? I'm not like hard set. I'm not hard set on psychics being real, not being real. Biblical prophecy, I have issues with just because I think they could become self-fulfilling prophecies, but we can leave that aside for a sec. So I'm just remembering one time, right? And this is just a whole different thing, right? And I've never met someone who's claimed to be a prophet before. I've literally never met anyone in my life who's like, I'm a prophet, right? But I've met a lot of psychics before, right? The ones where they like got like a shop, they got the tarot cards, right? They're doing star signs.
Miss Cleo, what you know about Miss Cleo?
Like that type of shit, right? And like, I'm there, I'll do the tarot card thing, and I'm like, I feel like this is just psychology. Like the knight with it's like the knight with 2 swords. It's like, oh, something bad just happened to you, right? And and they do it a lot better than that, right? And it's like, oh shit, that did happen to me 2 months ago, right? And I'm starting to rationalize whatever they just said. That's been most of my experience with psychics so far in life. It's like a prediction that's not really a prediction. It's like a very vague prediction, right? I don't know many people who make predictions that are specific, right? I actually disagree with Jeremy. I think that was a pretty specific prediction that he would get shot in the ear, right? That's pretty wild. It would be different if it was just a Trump assassination attempt, right?
Yeah.
That's like easier to predict as possible, right? So I understand what you're saying in the sense of like, Bible says, if you're claiming you're a prophet and then everything you say is not true, you have to be really careful, right?
Yeah.
The question is, and this is just a hard one. Like, I don't think there's a good answer to this, right? And you're probably more versed than me on this than I am. How could I tell if someone's just not getting, like, if it's extremely specific over and over again? That's one thing, right? But it literally reminds me of my friend. Like, I have a friend right now. You
have a friend?
I do. It's crazy. I talked to him because he's like interested in real estate investing, right? Potential PML in the future. And the reason why he's like not considering it at the moment, he's like, bro, I've hit 25 out of 27 of my parlays on fucking football right now, dude. I've been predicting shit like no one's fucking business, bro. And I'm like, all right. Is he a prophet? You know what I mean? When like obviously in my head, I'm like, no, you're just getting lucky, right? Or am I being a dumbass and I should think he's like actually a prophet, right? That's like where my issue is like how much is their luck versus actual like biblical or like actual like real like this person has a skill, right? I don't know. I don't know how to differentiate that well enough for me to feel comfortable saying psychics are real and prophecy is real. Because it could be, because I mean, just on that example, for instance, that's a really good fucking record, right? 25 out of 27, right? Saying he's not lying, right? So it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, how could I ever know? Like something could so seem like prophecy, but it just might not be, right? And it feels like I've heard so many stories like that where someone's getting just extremely lucky. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but
No. Here, let me give you. This is a fantastic example, right? Like, we're in real estate, right? How would you feel if you were at a meetup tomorrow, and you were wearing, or you're at a grocery store and you're wearing an I Buy Houses t-shirt, right? Because you're a baller and you run Denver.
or my
And somebody-
wholesalers t-shirt.
Boom, perfect, right? So you walk up to somebody with that wholesaler t-shirt, and there's a house on the back, and they're like, "Oh, houses are stupid. I would never buy a house." And you're like, "But why would you never buy a house?" No, dude, because I had a conversation. Like one time, I had this. My mom was trying to sell this house, and I talked to like 3 or 4 different. Oh, look at this guy. This guy knows a lot about football.
Or maybe I actually just have no idea about football parlays, and maybe like they're just actually insanely
I'm gonna
easy
be
to
honest
predict.
with you. You tell me what a football. I don't even know that football parlay was a thing.
It just means you're betting on
Betting on your internet being shit.
betting on several games winning or losing, like more than one. You're betting on like 2 or 3, and you have to get all of them right.
Yeah, here's the cool thing with football, right? You can use statistics and logic and
Yeah,
numbers
there's
and-
also statistics, right?
But let's go off my example. So you're there, you're talking to this lady. She's like, "Nah, real estate's bullshit. I don't ever want to own a house." You're like, "Okay, that's weird." Like in your head, your immediate reaction was to make this face, like, "Okay, all right, that's weird, but why?" And she's like, "Oh, my mom was selling a house, and I talked to these 3 guys, and they were super scammy, and they were trying to steal her house from her, and she had all this equity, and they didn't want to do it." So for me, I just concluded that like buying houses is definitely a scam because everybody I've ever talked to that's been in the housing game is full of shit. 2 questions for you. Is that a possible situation that someone might encounter if their only exposure is under that very, very, very limited context?
No, I get what you're saying. That was a really good point. Yeah, I understand your point of like, wait, maybe I've only encountered scammers. Like it's possible, right? Like it's possible that I've literally just never seen anyone who is a prophet or a really good psychic, right? I just don't know. The hard part with prophecy, I guess here's the hard part with psychics and prophecy. Generally, they're not repeatable. It's somewhat repeatable, and
Define
then
that.
it gets like if I say I can lift 20 pounds, let's say, right? I could do that over and 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 over again for you to show you that I could do 20 pounds. When I say I can close deals, I can close deals over and over and over again, right? Prophecies, the hard part is most people who I see prophecies make so many prophecies that, and I don't know, like actually, like now that I think about it, like probably if you had me do a bunch of calls, I'd close 1 out of 20 of them, and there'd be like 20 that were wrong and then 1 that was right, and then am I a closer? I guess it depends on what you mean. I guess it depends on how you define profit at that point. I don't know.
Yeah.
I got some to think about, Keanu, you know?
Here's the thing, right? The world's bigger than our experience to it, right? And we have to be willing to, if we want to not be naive people, and I don't mean that as an insult, I just mean that as the definition of the word. If we want to not be naive, you got to be willing to accept that there is a planet that exists outside of your little tiny narrow worldview, all of us. And to the extent that we expand our capacity to learn such things is the extent that we'll have understanding. Science's job is to do just that. Unfortunately, science has become more cultish in its own religion than it has a body or an endeavor of researching that which is unknown for a lot of situations. At least that's how we view it from a outside lens, right? There are still people who research those things in the attempt to understand it, but even they're handcuffed because if they try to present something that differs from the accepted narrative, they'll be shut down and they'll be criticized, right? So what happens is when you start to penalize people for challenging current norms, to even open yourself up to the craziest of ideas, when you start punishing that, you start becoming ignorant by choice. And you're encouraging ignorance because you don't want to shake up your little snow globe of existence that you think is real. So let's talk about this for a minute. Here's the cool thing. For thousands of years, the Bible's talked about this stuff. It's talked about it and it's explained it. And it's explained how this works. So but you fast forward a couple of years, other things have started to pick up on this. The New Age movement. You realize that, like, okay, familiar. For example, how familiar are you with the law of attraction?
I know it.
Is it legit? Is it bullshit? What do you think?
Law of attraction to me is like a necessary requirement of getting success, but it's not what's causing the success. If that makes sense.
Hold on. You just said some psychic esoteric bullshit is a requirement to success. Okay, walk me through that.
Well, tell me if I understand the law of attraction right. The law of attraction, and it's been a while. I read The Secret a long ass time ago. Right, that's like the first book that I feel like the most famous book that talks about it. Right,
okay.
It's the idea that basically like you have to envision and believe and truly like see something in order for it to happen. In order to get tons of money, the girl, right? You have to like literally envision it, spell out the details, get specific with it, right? And then because of that, it will then happen. That's the idea, right? Am I wrong about that? I think that's basically it. So in my head, extremely hard things to do: getting rich, getting a 10 out of 10 babe, right? Whatever, who's like a life partner and that is like the one, right? Whatever, the hard things that are hard to do in life. In my head, the law of attraction is just a necessary step of many to achieve whatever it is. When you do that and you get to that level of specificity, it makes it more probable that that thing will happen, but a lot more than just you envisioning the thing is necessary for that thing to happen. So it's not
still what you're saying what you're saying is that success, which should be tangible and trackable, is incumbent upon something esoteric being willed into existence, right? And here's the thing. That is a widely accepted, extremely unexplainable, logically point of view. Nobody has a problem with that. But how is that any different than the exact same topic we're discussing tonight that people feel comfortable scoffing at? In theory, fundamentally, how is it any different?
How is the law of attraction different than psychics? Is that what you mean?
Correct. The idea that we can know something that we shouldn't know. The idea that we can predict something that we have no way of controlling that could happen. Or the idea that we can will something into existence, our wildest dreams, and will them, and then they happen. Are those not all in the same realm of esoteric belief systems? Would you not agree with that?
There are esoteric belief systems, but there's different levels of evidence to it. So, like, let me...
No. Well, see, this is where I disagree with you. There's not different levels of evidence to it, Jonah. Not even close. The evidence supporting biblical prophecy freaking drastically outweighs the evidence of the law of attraction, right? That's a 100-year-old mindset that we've accepted in New Age business circles, right? Prophecy's 4,000 or 5,000 years old, my guy, right? Like, you're not even in the same ballpark of depth of evidence. But you know what it is? It's more publicly acceptable. The cool kids say it's real and we can talk about it, so we can talk about it.
Can I actually say my argument though? I just disagree. Like, I would say this. So, like,
society. I'm not mocking you. I'm mocking society.
You're a little bit mocking me too, and it's okay. Don't worry about it. No, what I'm saying though is like, okay, I can go. Okay, I want, like, with the law of attraction, I can literally talk to someone who, and I guess technically there's probably someone I could talk. I mean, maybe not, because like now that I'm thinking about it, I guess I could technically talk to someone who went to a psychic and they predicted X, Y, and Z, right? You're right. Actually, probably the more I think about it, like, there's not really that much difference of a level of evidence, other than I know rich people who actually use the law of attraction. So therefore, I think that it is somewhat helpful to getting rich, right? I can see it much more. It's much more observable, I feel like. With psychics or biblical prophecy, right? All I saw happen was a man spoke some words, right? Made a prophecy, and then it happened to happen. And then it just gets hard because it's like, I've done that before, but I definitely don't have the gift of prophecy, right? While something like getting extremely successful, right? Like hundreds of millions of dollars, I haven't done before. So seeing someone who's done it before saying that, like, yeah, no, this is like a prerequisite, that makes me feel like it's more likely real because I can literally talk to the person who's done it. I may have just not talked to enough psychics, legitimately. Like, I don't know. Like, it's hard to tell. I just haven't talked to that many psychics that I feel like were like not just using psychological tricks on me. So this might just be an ignorance thing, dude. Does Jonah believe in demons? Because they real too, but he may not be ready for a combo like that. I do not believe in demons. I know everyone with the ad, but I'm ready to have the combo, dude. I'll talk about anything.
Yeah.
Show me demons, bro.
Maybe you want to see a demon? Nah, bro. that's a random request, but okay. Now so here's the thing, bro. Here's what I think is really, really interesting. And this is why I love talking about stuff like this, because it's all a matter of it's just expanding your mind, right? Expanding your paradigms. Are you familiar with quantum entanglement, for example?
I am. That actually I do know about, and I think is super interesting. It's like one of the things that I'm like, this makes me feel like there's more than just the physical matter of the universe. Because what the fuck is
right?
this?
So for those of you who don't understand what quantum entanglement is, we could go into a lot about quantum entanglement, but I'll give you guys a very rudimentary example. How many of you guys have ever been sitting somewhere and you all of a sudden you think about this person, they randomly pop in your head and 2 seconds later that phone rings, right? Or you're sitting there and all of a sudden you just feel someone looking at you, you look back and somebody looking at you, or you've been looking at somebody else and then all of a sudden they turn back and they make eye contact with you. Well, science has studied this, and science is saying, okay, how do we know out of the blue that this random person is going to call us? How do we feel someone who we can't see looking at us and do this? How do we scientifically prove this? Well, quantum theory went into in-depth research about this, and this is where quantum entanglement came into place. And quantum entanglement basically says that everything is connected. They don't exactly know why it's connected. They haven't figured that part out, but they at least give scientific credence to this phenomenon. All they're saying is that we're connected in a way that's way larger than we understand. We know that that's scientifically true. We just don't fully understand it, which I think is interesting because there's other places that talk about this. You know where?
Oh, I don't know. The Bible?
The Bible. Very, very interesting. The Bible talks about this stuff too. So a couple thousand years ago, that old, poorly translated, man-written book happened to predict things that science is admittedly just beginning to comprehend, but still doesn't understand. And there are so many examples where this is true. And it's my belief, Jonah, that quantum theory is the beginning of science's endeavor to understand the supernatural, a realm of existence that has been known and respected for millennia. And it wasn't until a couple hundred years ago in Western education that it started getting disrespected in the way that it was. To be clear, 200 years ago, the supernatural realm was respected in this country and globally. The belief in God was respected and understood globally. The belief in spirits and all of these different things were widely accepted. This was not a crazy phenomenon. For millennia, everybody knew this to be true. Every culture on the planet believed in these things. It wasn't until, and we can go with this, I mean, I don't know how far we want to go down this road, but it wasn't until the Rockefellers and those people started taking over education systems in different countries, right? And all of the countries where those people funded, Europe, like major countries that are big today, all of those countries adopted those education systems. Coincidentally, those are all the same countries who say God isn't real. And it's all science. But now science is starting to catch up and say, hold on, there's something to this spiritual stuff. There's something going on here. I don't really understand it. What they're finally beginning to do is they're beginning, what I believe is to understand what's already been there for the entire time. Let me give you a little bit of context, right? Let's talk about the law of attraction, right? You're manifesting things that you want. There's a scripture that's very similar to that. It says, speak those things that be not as though they were. Jesus said, as you believe, so shall it be unto you. When it talks about the transformation experience of spirituality, when you're getting born again and you're going through this whole transformation, one of the most important parts of it is being transformed by the renewing of your mind. I could give you 50 verses in scripture that have been around for thousands of years that are verbatim teachings that we get the law of attraction from. So is the law of attraction some random esoteric thing that works and we should just follow because New Age people tapped into something special? Or did they tap into something that's been in existence for millennia and it's been in our face the whole time? But we're so busy scoffing our left hand and benefiting our right hand, not realizing that they're saying the same thing. And this is where ignorance doesn't serve us, because everything you see in the law of attraction has been in the Bible for a very, very long time. That's where they got it from. And they don't realize it. Why? Because it's the same thing. And this is where I think it gets really, really interesting when you're talking about scripture, because the people who naively start to debunk or discredit things like the Bible or scripture don't realize that they're just insulting their own intelligence. Because when you begin to understand the principles of the things that are proclaimed in scripture, what you find is the principles that are found in nature or the principles that are found in science. Like Reggie's saying right here, energy, all of these different things, bro, they've been around forever. It's frequencies. And so when you talk about prophecy, bro, we're not talking about that drastically different of a thing. Because when you're a person who operates in the office of a prophet, this is who you are, what you're built to do. That is an entirely different calling than someone who's gifted. But what we're talking about when we're talking about the spirit of prophecy, let me use on non-Bible speak to use that. You're tapping into the energy. Let's use a more accurate word. You're tapping into the frequency. That's all there is. Okay, well, if we start looking at the Bible for what it is, instead of for what people tell us it is, we start to realize that the Bible talks about this a lot, right? When the word says at the very beginning, God said, and God said, let there be light. That word said in certain language is the same word where we get the word frequency. Everything on this planet, oddly enough, is created by frequency. Have you ever heard of cymatics?
I feel like I've heard that word before, but I forgot it.
You ever seen somebody put something under a speaker and then they turn the speaker on and then all of a sudden it makes a shape?
Oh, yeah. Like water and stuff?
Yeah, that's cymatics, right? And there are many people believe that the existence of our planet and creation comes from cymatics. Frequencies go into play. This gets really, really interesting when you start talking about big buildings. We can maybe do a podcast about this because a lot of these look like cymatic. These buildings that we see that we don't know how they were made are identically shaped to cymatic frequencies, right? Which goes into a whole different conversation. But here's the point, bro. If you start looking at it for what quantum theory is beginning to look at it like, you're starting to realize, wait, holy crap, maybe, Jonah, everything is in existence. The supernatural realm where God in heaven exists is just at a frequency and in a dimension different than that on earth. But because these things interact and intersect, those frequencies can be accessed, just like the frequency on a radio. And how do you access the frequency on a radio? Well, that we know can be dicey, right? You and I were on a phone call today. Guess what? When the signal started dropping, our words started getting less clear. When you have a strong signal, it's more clear. Same with the radio, same with prophecy. You ask me what I think is probably happening with your boy, it's a combination of two things. One, he probably knows enough intellectually about what's going on in the game that he's doing those things. But when somebody gets past what's normal to get to something that's past just mathematically likely, it is very possibly they're doing exactly what manifestors are doing. And what are manifestors doing? Taking biblical principles and they're tapping into the frequency. That frequency is where the information exists. So we can talk about how, oh, it's just stupid, it's whatever. Is it possible, Jonah, if what we're saying is true, and let's merge this all together, maybe if this is all real and God exists and there's a supernatural world and the end was already written for the beginning, which the Bible says it was, we are in time. But the supernatural world exists outside of time. We're just living out what's already happened according to that realm. Well, if that's true, then what's already happened is already known. And those frequencies are already out there in the ether. Is it possible if that frequency, just like a radio station is out there, and humans are spiritual beings, which if we're trained how, just like the remote viewing program trained them to do, and we know how to tap into those things, is it possible that when a guy like this is praying, maybe all he's doing is tapping into the frequency that's showing what's already happened? Because it's already happened. He's just learned how to disconnect himself from the limitations of a natural body and tap into something that's already existent in the universe. And he's just seeing the frequency, telling us what he's seeing, because he's able to connect with the supernatural world because of his relationship with God and the time that he dedicates to prayer and doing such things. And God is showing him the frequency where these things exist. Maybe it's just that simple. Now, that's not necessarily simple, but can you understand how this actually can become a tangible, teachable, recreatable thing, which is why the guy that we're talking about tonight in the last couple of days has done 3 things that have all come to pass.
It's possible. I guess here's my issue with it, right? Like, these are just my feelings on it as you're speaking, right? It's all possible. The question is how reliable is it, right? Am I going to be willing to bet $1,000 on one of his prophecies being right? And then like, do you get what I mean? Like, how much could I actually, because like, okay, the biblical prophecies, relying on whether those are true or not, that's a big deal. But let's just take this guy, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Should I, because he's gotten some prophecies right, listen to every word he says? I guess what's the action item with a psychic or a prophecy, right?
I think it's what you're willing to put into it, right? You know what I mean? I'm not betting money on what this guy has to say. I look at it as information. It's information that I put in my pocket.
So then it's just like, then at that point, it's just kind of like interesting information. And then it's like, okay, it's cool and all that, right? And maybe he is accessing another dimension and everything you just said, right? But I guess for me, at least in my life, it's like at that point, then what's the point, right? Like it's not really that important at all. It's cool. It's interesting, right? And it's like, and it would be really, and if I knew a guy like that and he could predict that about stocks, I'm going to get fucking loaded, right? Like
did
that's
that about XRP. He actually did about one of the cryptos.
Well, then it's like, okay, I'm like, it's like, all right, well, like, I guess in your worldview, Keanu, let's say he made another prediction about like, let's say a stock. Should I go buy that stock? Like, what do you think? Like, what, like, I'm curious because he's gotten stuff right in the past. It's like hard, right? Like, it's like, or is it just, or like part of me is just like, yeah, but he could just be wrong about some of his prophecies too. Like, I just don't know.
Let's go back to the example that we gave earlier about the person who's like, oh, houses are bullshit because of that experience with my mom. And then you respond, okay, well, let me explain to you a little bit. Just to be clear, there's lots of ways to do, and you give that person a 60-second overview of why they maybe had a bad experience. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so should I buy or rent? And what should I be paying? Well, like, bro, like you're asking a very specific.
At that point, it would be, I'd have to know.
Very fast. But no, here's the thing. They're asking a very specific question that requires so much more information for you to be able to answer accurately. I think I would say there are better questions to ask. Here's my opinion. Here's my opinion of what are the better questions. My first question is it even possible that these things are legitimate? Question number 1.
It's possible.
Okay. Then question number 2 would be a 2-part question. 2 would be 1, why was I so hesitant to even open up my mind to this in the first place? Right? 2, what actually opened up my mind to it? What made it intriguing to me? Right? Okay. Then once I understand that, I can start saying, okay, well then let me understand how this works in the first place so I can at least get a grasp of what I'm talking about, because I need to understand all of these questions before I can begin to ask, now, how do I use these things in my life? Right? You're talking about a gigantic subject that has huge ramifications and can be extremely helpful, because to your previous point, you know multimillionaires and potentially billionaires who have transformed their lives by tapping into a 1% fragment of this world. So the ramifications can be huge. But let me ask you this. If you asked any of those people who tapped into a small aspect of this world and saw the benefits of that, and you said, hey, by the way, if I wanted to tap into this world, but I mostly think it's bullshit, do you think it'll still work? What do you think their answer is going to be?
Sorry, say that one more time.
If you went to them, like, let's just say we'll call him Bob, and Bob's a billionaire, Bob the billionaire. And you're like, hey, Bob the billionaire, Bob the billionaire. Hey, Bob the billionaire.
Bob the builder built a few apartment complexes and he became a billionaire.
Now he crushing. He's like, hey, Bobby B, bro, I know you big on the manifestation thing. Low key, I think it's kind of bullshit. But if I just pretend I kind of believe in it a little bit just so I can make some money like you got, you think I'll be good? What do you think he's going to tell you?
Obviously, no, you idiot.
Why?
Because you're not a billionaire. I'm a billionaire. And that's how I became a billionaire. And you're a freaking moron because you're not listening to the person who's done it.
There you go. What you're doing is you're questioning the thing you don't understand, like you're qualified to question it. Instead of trusting the person who knows so much about it, it's transformed their lives. Why? Because you say you want the outcome that comes with the faith in the thing, when what you really want is to hold on to your limiting beliefs because those make you feel more comfortable because they're familiar to you.
Wait, no, here's the difference, though. And this is actually a really good point. So Bob the billionaire, right? Hopefully he's on Forbes. I'm at his mansion or something. I can see physical manifestations of his billions and that he's not lying, because there's a lot of liars out there too, right? There's a lot of people who are lying, want attention, money, whatever. My problem with psychics and prophecy is there's no physical manifestation like that.
I just sent you a video that's physical manifestation. You saw 3 physical manifestations really quick.
But him making predictions, right? I've made predictions before. I've never been a billionaire before, but I've made predictions before, right? And I guess it gets back at your point of like how specific we're there, right? I made a prediction that, like, I don't know if you remember this, when we were doing our election podcast, I was like, dude, I think Trump's going to win, right? That's pretty probable, right? That was a pretty probable thing, right?
Prophet Jonah.
So I'm just saying, right? I'm just saying, like, you're right in the sense that I understand your point with that metaphor. The hard part for me is I think, yes, there's some physical manifestations in a prophecy thing, but I think it's very hard. I think it's a lot harder to tell charlatans from not charlatans in comparison to people who, and I actually, in some ways, it actually is kind of hard with billionaires too sometimes. I mean, people do lie about how much money they have, right? That is true as well, right?
You can buy those Forbes articles, my guy.
Yeah, it's true, right? So I don't know. What would you recommend? Like, let's say I'm like, okay, all right, Keanu's piqued my interest. Maybe I literally know nothing and I'm just completely talking about it out of my ass. It's possible, right? Where would you start to like figure out like who are the actual real psychics? And how would you figure out who's the real psychics and who's not the real psychics? Like, where would you even start with that process?
Yeah, honestly, and I mean this as respectfully as possible, I wouldn't look to psychics, right? And I'm gonna. How much do you want me to answer this question?
Well, I asked it.
All right, so I wouldn't look to psychics, and here's why. And this is my belief, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, because I know that there's a lot of people who operate in this. I know people who they're fantastic people. This is not an attack against the person. This is just, I'm going to give you my experience and my belief based on spending a lot of time studying spiritual things. I believe the spiritual world exists. And I believe that this spiritual world was created from a source. I call that source God, right? Well, just like with any good, there's a bad. Just like with any light, there's a darkness. The supernatural world still works regardless of which side of that fence that you're on, right? And so if you have a gift that comes from God, but you are not using it in connection to God, then by definition, your spiritual gift is not connected to the source of that gift. It's connected to an alternative, fraudulent version of that source, which means that by definition, that gift can be tainted or it can be manipulated. Does that make sense? So I'll give you an example. I will postulate a theory that is out there to give you an example. Have you ever watched those psychics who will call someone out of the crowd and tell them everything your aunt is standing behind you and here's everything about that family member? And the people start bawling because this guy's saying stuff that only people in the family would know.
I've seen stuff like that, yeah.
Right? So how do you deny that? This person just said stuff that was impossible. They call themselves a psychic. Psychics are legit because there is no mathematical reason for them to do that. How do you quantify that? Well, I can give you an example that many people believe, right? Many people believe that this spiritual realm exists. And what happens is because there are angels and demons, those angels and demons exist in abundance around our lives. They're around you right now. They're around me right now. And there are many believe that many of us are assigned.
Are they mainly demons? Like, can you see them? Like, what do you mean? Can you
Some
see
people
the
can.
demons?
That's a whole different. We need to do a seer podcast. You know,
Another question.
There are
If I'm
people,
Jewish, is it mainly demons? How does that work?
probably not because you're Jewish, but because you're you.
Okay.
Definitely more demons than angels. Now, fun fact: we can do a podcast about this, bro. I'm gonna tell you right now, we can do a podcast about this. But there are seers, right? Just like there are people who have the gift of being. Huh?
Do you know any seers personally?
My aunt is kind of one, but not like that. My aunt has seen really, really weird stuff.
I don't want like a kind of seer. I want like the guy. Like that would be sick. I'm just saying, like that could be a whole nother thing. We got to find a seer.
Now we could do a podcast about that, but like these are people who legit they just see angels and demons like they see you and me. Like they'd be sitting here in this podcast. Oh, by the way, you got an angel and 2 demons standing behind you. Just FYI, because this is just the world that they live in. There are people who have this gift. I have known multiple people who have had this gift. I knew someone who had it temporarily. Like they were praying a lot and God said, I'm going to open up your spiritual eye. Like this is someone that I knew very, very well. This is what they told me. I'm telling you what they said. This person had no reason to lie to me. If you knew this person personally, you'd be like, nah, this person was not lying. This is not that personality at all. They were praying and one time they had this thing and boom, all of a sudden they could see. And they said they were miserable for a year because they were terrified. Like they didn't know. They were like, you drive down the street, you look over to somebody's car, you see demons in their face, you see demons in their passenger seat, you look at the homeless guy on the corner. Oh, by the way, there's a demon standing. Like they were terrified, right? So I've heard many, many stories firsthand. Well, I guess that would be secondhand, right? Anyways, I've heard stories like that. I have not experienced that very much. I have experienced some things like that, but they're one-off experience. Like I think I told you I almost got pushed off a bridge one time. Like I felt the 2 hands on my back. There was zero question and there was nothing behind me, right? So I've had some weird experiences. Nothing like that though. In any case, there are people who can see these things, right? So if you talk to those people, they will tell you the same thing that the scripture says, that human beings are characters in a much bigger play. We think we're the main characters, and to a certain degree we are. What we don't realize is that the play is bigger than planet Earth. The play is bigger than what we know. And what they will tell you is that these spiritual beings are in much larger number. Appreciate you, Reggie. Appreciate you, man.
Wait, Reggie, before you leave, I actually wanted to ask your question. I wanted to answer your question. Yes, I have. I have in business. I remember my first deal. I remember like seeing the check in my hands and how it would be, right? And how it would feel and like where I was going to be and like being in my car, right? I have manifested a few things like that. A lot of times I'll manifest something and it doesn't happen exactly how I thought it would happen. right? For sure, because I like didn't know enough. But that one, I feel like I did manifest like exactly how I thought it would. So that's my answer.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, I know some pretty heavy manifestors, man. And they do it. They got the checks to show for it. So seers will tell you. Appreciate you, Reggie. Appreciate you hanging out, man. Always. Seers will tell you that these things are real. Seers will tell you, the Bible will tell you that we are players in a much bigger game. And because humans play an important role, we are assigned demons by that dark side to follow us around and mess with us throughout our life. And if you become a believer and follow the Lord, you get angels too. And they protect you, right? Okay, cool. Believe that, don't believe that, I don't really care. But that's just what people say. So let's assume that that's true. What many people will say is that because those demons are assigned to you your entire life, they're what they're referred to as, if you study demonology and you get into witchcraft and voodoo, and just to be clear, there are entire nations who believe in this stuff. Nations, countries. Voodoo is like a real thing, to be clear.
I know.
And
I live in Dominican, Haiti. Haiti has a lot of
you know. So what they will call these santos or familiar spirits. They have a name for them. They know this is true, right? They know this is true. I talk about this to them and they're like, yeah, everybody knows that because it's common knowledge to them. They know this is true. They're called santos or they're called familiar spirits, depending on what you do. Well, what many people will tell you is those psychics who are talking to your family member aren't talking to your family member. They're talking to the familiar spirit that was with that family member their entire life. And that's why they know. So they may not know they're doing that, though. All they know is that they're tapped into a frequency. They see something that looks like a person, and they say, I don't know what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm seeing. Does this just sound accurate? Oh my God, yes, it's accurate. I'm crying. Okay. And they use this nickname. Oh my God, nobody called him that but me. Right? And they start like now, but all they're doing is describing what they're seeing. What many of them don't know is what they're seeing is not the family member, because that family member is gone. They're seeing the demonic spirit who's stuck here, who was following that family member around. Now that family member's gone, they're just hanging out with the other family members that are remaining because they're assigned to that bloodline. And that's who those people are talking to. So when you talk about spirits versus like psychics versus prophecy, what you can open yourself up to, if you believe in these esoteric things, is you have someone who has access to a gift, but they don't have access to the source. So they can see what they see, but they don't understand what they're seeing. And because they're not playing under the realms of the giver of the gift, they are open and susceptible to getting tricked in a much larger way. So that's why I treat them differently, because many of those people are fantastic people and they just don't know that. So you can learn to tell the signs of when people are doing things. And I'll give you an example. I won't say who this person is. You know this person. They used to have a friend who was really, really big into Santeria. Big into it. Whole family was into it. And they used to go to those church services with them, right? They would go to these church services and bro, like these people, like she would see like 100-pound girls start talking like grown-ass men in languages they did not speak because they would get possessed by demons. And they would start talking like these demons. They'd start slithering on the floor. Stuff on the house would start moving around. Glasses would fly across the room, like crazy stuff that you see on TV. And they've seen this stuff firsthand because those people were accessing the spiritual realm, but they weren't accessing the right side of the spiritual realm. So I think there are both sides of it. So what I would say is, I believe this stuff is true. If somebody's really interested in getting into it, I would say understand the source of it and make sure you're operating on the right side of it.
I love it. With that, I'm kind of dying. My throat's like, I'm like struggling to speak at this point. So yep. I'm down to top it off with that basically, and just be like, that is like really interesting in the sense of everything. But yeah, like it is really interesting how like it's just it's just hard for me with things that are esoteric. I'm like, I think like, do they ever talk about like how certain people it's like harder if they're like not like, because certain people just were born probably not as like, even on your worldview, like as in tune with God, right? Like just generally,
of course.
Right? So it's just interesting. Like I have a spiritual side to me, right? Where like, and there are weird things I've experienced in my life that like I cannot explain through matter and energy. Like there are supernatural things that happen in my life that I'm like, that's weird, right? I don't know. I find it interesting. I find it
man. I think the world's bigger than the city or the state that we're from. The world's bigger than the United States. The world's bigger than Western culture. The world is bigger than just the natural realm, right? And I think that when it becomes sad is when we limit our belief of what's possible to the little tiny thing that we already know to be true. Well, by definition, if we have limited understanding, then you already have stopped yourself if you're not willing to accept stuff that's foreign. And for whatever reason, when it comes to topics like this, people get weird. And I think that's unfortunate. I get it. It sounds weird, but just so you know, many of the people who hear this are from the Western cultures are like, oh, this is crazy. These people are stupid. Bro, there's entire nations who know for a fact that this is real and have seen it play out in their lives. So then who's wrong? Because they have the same evidence that you're saying that you've never seen. Well, why do they have the evidence? Maybe they have the evidence because they're not as closed off to it as you are. Right? And that is a question that most people aren't willing to ask themselves. And unfortunately, because we're followers and not leaders by nature, we wait till public acceptance makes something the norm before we open ourselves up to understand it. But usually by then it's too late, right? If you wait until everybody was, who made the most money in Bitcoin? The people who bought it when everybody said it was a bullshit scam, or the people who bought it once it was popular?
Wait, a huge sidetrack. I remember in college, I was looking to different businesses. One of them was going to be Bitcoin mining, but Bitcoin was only like $500 per Bitcoin. I was going to do it on my shitty MacBook laptop, and I was like, this isn't going to be profitable. It's like, I'm going to spend more money on the energy. But if I had done that, I probably would have had like $100,000 now. I probably would have gotten one Bitcoin.
Yeah, one bit. Well, here's the thing. I remember when it was like 0.01. Somebody came to me and was like, bro, what do you think about this? Because I was working on the stock market at the time. And I was like, honestly, I don't know enough about it. Yeah. And I didn't
heard about it. It was like $400, $400 or $500.
Oh, no. It was still at the very, very beginning. But here's the thing. Here's the point. Who's smart? The smart people who were so smart that they made fun of all the people who were buying into that scam, or the people who are willing to believe what everybody else scoffed at? Right? Those people, right? And I think all of life operates like this in some capacity. And when it comes to topics like this is where I wish people were just, don't believe me. I don't care if you believe me or not, right? Like I'm not moved by somebody's belief system. I just wish that for your own good, you would stop and realize that there's so much more to this than you're giving credence, right? We didn't even watch the second video, but like that guy predicted, he literally was sitting there and he said, there's going to be 2 attacks on the same day, right? 2 attacks on the exact same day. And he said, he said Vegas and he said New Orleans. And then on the same day, there was an attack. Let's play it real quick. It's like what, 30 seconds long? Let's play it.
The thing is, doesn't he also say Nashville? That was like also part of it. Where I was like, all right.
He does also say Nashville. So here's the question: was he wrong? Or one thing that people will say is that when God gives you these things in advance, it's because you're supposed to pray to try to stop things from happening. He's warning you so you can do something about it. So you could also argue maybe, he was able to pray enough to stop one of the 3. I have no idea. I genuinely do not know. But these are, where's the timestamp? I had the timestamp, like 27:50. All right.
Joel, have you ever thought this comment gets into, Joel? I always also sometimes think about like, what if everyone else is just an NPC? And I'm like and I'm just like someone's playing me.
You're the main character. Of course, you would think you're the main character.
What if like everyone else actually is just an NPC, and this whole universe was created just for me?
So wait, hold on. That's possible, but like, okay, you're a main character, right? Am I NPC or am I main character?
I'm kind of fucking around, right? No. Like, I just had those moments where, like, I'm not talking about like I have no fucking clue with people I'm actually interacting with, where I'm just like on like the train, you know, for like an hour and just like remember being like, are these like even real people around me? Like theoretically, these are people with hopes, dreams, trauma, all sorts of crazy shit. But what if they're like what if they're just like not real? What if they're just like literally just part of the matrix? You know? Like that's where I was going with that. I don't fucking know, dude. I don't know. Maybe you're a main character, maybe you're an NPC. Maybe you're a demon, bro, meant to torment me. I don't fucking know, dude.
I'm just sent to F with you the whole time. I'm cool if part of my purpose is to mess with Jonah. I'm good with that actually. Yo, Simpsons. We didn't talk about the Simpsons, but the Simpsons.
Yeah,
like,
also,
it
is crazy with their predictions. The stuff they predicted was.
All right, let's listen to this guy.
Very interesting.
So,
Father, I
muted.
thank you, Lord, that you're rising up
We good?
in Las Vegas.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Okay, so we'll go back. He's just sitting here praying, guys. That's all he's doing. He's praying and he's filming himself praying, and he's just saying what he's seeing in the prayer. So let's see.
Very interesting. Father, I thank you, Lord, that you're rising up in Las Vegas. Over Las Vegas, Father. I just seen a glimpse of Vegas. Oh, are these all on the same day? I pray over Las Vegas, Lord. Oh, it is. Interesting.
So you start speaking in tongues.
Given to me. I'm praying in my heavenly language. With all my heart, you have the gift inside of you. If you know how.
Where is it? Wait, where did it go? Where's the other one?
Wait, why don't you just do the clip? Why are we watching the whole thing?
I don't know, because I wanted to go to the actual date.
I would just watch the clip. Why not just do the clip that you sent?
Here we go. There we go.
People can look up their own stuff. Yeah, like when I first saw this, Nathan, this was initially my response too, for sure. Right? Like that's what was my first response. But you haven't been seeing a lot of this. He makes some weird predictions that we were getting into earlier in the podcast. Are you looking for the clip?
Oh, I'm literally playing it, and you guys can't see it. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Here it is here. So, yeah, I showed it to him, Nathan. The reason I went to that one is because Jonah didn't believe me. So I had to go back to the one.
That one's actually before when it happened.
Yeah, so the one that I was just found was filmed before, but this is the clip of that like 50-minute video. So
over Las Vegas, Father, I just seen a glimpse of Vegas. Oh, are these all on the same day? I pray over Las Vegas, Lord. Oh, it is. Interesting. I just seen a glimpse of New Orleans, Bourbon Street. It is an attack simultaneously when people are distracted. When people are distracted, with drinking, much drinking in these areas, with intoxication in these areas, on these streets that I'm seeing, there's people that are very intoxicated. Their senses are not alert for what's happening in these areas. The bars, there's bars. It's not as strong in New Orleans as Tennessee and Nevada, as Tennessee and Las Vegas, as Nashville and Las Vegas, the party scene. There's something about New Orleans, but there's not as strong as what I see about these two places. There's something more. It's like one and many. But I would say New Orleans is darkest, but there's just one man and many. It's a massed plan. It's a mass plans. There's more than just these two, the Lord says.
I think we get it.
Just these two.
I don't know if we need to watch all of it. He's predicting like an attack, right?
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting, right?
And here's the real conspiracy. Ready? Maybe it had something to do with it.
maybe he's the funder. He bought that Army shirt, and then he said, "You know what? I know Army guys. Let me have them go blow some shit up, and then see what happens."
Bro, that's how you become a real fucking prophet. You know what I'm saying?
Wait, hold on. Is that your main character energy? Are you just gonna start funding terrorism, Jonah? Is this what your plan is, bro?
Dude, if it gets you to start listening to my prophecies, bro, 10 out of 10, hell yes.
You gotta share prophecies, bro.
Yeah, I should make more prophecies.
One out of every 5 of your videos need to be prophetic. I need you to start predicting stuff.
That would be hilarious. I should do that. I should do a predictions for 2025.
Do it.
I would. Most of my predictions are wrong. Is the fucking issue? Not gonna lie. I make a lot of predictions. They're just not right. I predicted interest rates would go to 10%. They did not go quite to 10%. So you know, I don't think I got the gift. Is the fucking issue?
Maybe you know. Maybe look. David's got his own prediction. Let's see. But yes, was he right in his prophecy, or did he just self-fulfill his prophecy?
Who knows? Okay, with that,
the Simpsons know, Jonah. The Simpsons know.
Simpsons know. Guys, real quick before we end this, because I'm literally dying here, I'm gonna relink the I'm gonna put it up. I put it in the comments earlier. Relink, guys. We have an official Prophet and Paradox channel. Please subscribe there. You'll get clips there that you can't get on our channels, right? So if you want to see like extra clips, you want to see throughout your day and stuff like that, right? Because I think this is how I think we should do it. I think from now on, clips should go on that channel. So like people who subscribe to that get extra than just from us. And then we can still do the full lives, but like the clips should just be there. Because otherwise there's no point. They need a reason to subscribe there for our channels.
You said you were going to show your titty pics on that channel too.
I will also show you my tits on that channel. So I think that gets 0 out of 5 out of anyone wanting to watch that. But you know,
I watch it. I subbed for that reason, just to be clear. Also, you know what I just noticed, Jonah?
What?
The first word in our name is prophet.
Wow. Okay. And with that, Prophet and Paradox, episode 32. I do have hairy tits. I appreciate all of you. Good night.
Peace.